movies that I've had to get caught up on recently, so I have to go to another 6 films deep. Number 6 is CarryOn. Yes, this movie came out around Christmas time. It's just been a while since I've been able to actually talk about it. And I really enjoyed this flick. There was some really great stuff about it. Taron Egerton and Jason Bateman were fantastic in this movie. I love both of them in this film. Jason Bateman's voice over the phone, over the device. It's a pulse-pounding movie while still being just a straight-up action film. Not trying to be anything more than that. Die Hard at an airport, though, isn't Die Hard 2 at an airport? But yeah, Die Hard at an airport. It is really fun. There's a really cool yet sort of ridiculous car crash scene in this movie that is really engaging and thrilling. Yet the CGI throughout this film, especially during that car crash scene, is not very good.
This is bad. Very bad.
But it's used very sparingly, thank goodness, and the rest of the movie is pretty good. It's a fun sort of Christmas time movie to watch. It's a very popular film. It's one of the most, or if not the most watched movie on Netflix ever. But yeah, like there's definitely some pacing issues, some editing things. There's some stuff about the movie that the characters decide to do that you're like, okay.
Why?
But if you can sit back, turn off your brain, just have a good time, this is definitely worth a watch, especially now that it's on Netflix. So I'm gonna go ahead and give CarryOn a B-. The next film is BetterMan, the first of 2 musical biopic films that are on this list today. This movie is about the life and rise and fall and redemption story of Robbie Williams. And I'm not a lover of biopic movies, so you gotta keep that all in mind as I go into this review. Let's first start off with the musical numbers are fantastic. Michael Gracie directed this movie really well when it came to the musical numbers. Like, of course, he did The Greatest Showman, and you can see that sort of vibe and tone throughout this film. There's a particular musical number called Rock DJ. They're dancing down the street to this great, pop song, and they're jumping in and out of like stores and buses and doing flips off of things, and they're, dancing on gumballs and on pogo sticks, and like it's wacky and crazy, but it works, and it's a fantastic musical number. He definitely knows what he's doing in the director's chair. The choreography and the dancing is great, and like anytime it's focused on Robbie Williams and sort of his story and really just kind of trying to tell it straightforward, this movie works. Like, it's good. Anytime that this film goes into the wackiness and the fantasy stuff, it absolutely does not work. Boom! The whole shtick, the whole sort of premise of this movie is that everyone's a human except for Robbie Williams, who is this monkey. This dancing, performing monkey for the audience. And he says at the beginning of the movie, like, that's how I've always felt. Just go with it and enjoy the film. I gotta say, it actually took me out of the movie throughout the whole runtime. Why? Why would you spend the money on this CGI that, honestly, the monkey CGI does not look very good? This could have been just like a regular biopic with a young actor playing a young Robbie Williams, and I think I actually would have liked it more. And I know what they're trying to do with like biopic movies. Like recently, Pharrell Williams with his Lego Piece by Piece film. It's Robbie Williams, but visually as a monkey. And no, it didn't work. If the CGI and motion capture performance was a lot better, I think it could have actually paid off, but it's almost like that's the part of the film they skipped the money on. It was a shtick that I really couldn't get on board with. And there was almost like a graininess and like grit and dirt on the lens and like a fogginess to this movie, and I was really disappointed with how poorly visually this movie looked in the end. Overall, I did enjoy this film. I had a good time. I had a smile on my face when I came out of the movie theater. So overall, I'm gonna go ahead and give BetterMan a B-. The next film on this list is ACompleteUnknown. Yes, the other musical biopic on this list. First of all, James Mangold is a great director. I love 3:10 to Yuma, Logan, Ford v Ferrari, and especially his other musical biopic film, Walk the Line. And there's a lot of crossover between the Walk the Line and this film, A Complete Unknown, with like Johnny Cash being in both movies, and some songs that were sung in Walk the Line are also sung in this film. So yes, even though James Mangold does a great job directing this movie and visually it looks great, there is for sure some retread and some copying from Walk the Line that he does again in this film. And I don't think it works as good in this movie as it did in the Walk the Line film.
How do I know which one to shoot? What? How do I know which one is the real dad?
Bob Dylan being portrayed by Timothée Chalamet is amazing. He is so good in this movie. I can totally see why he's nominated for a bunch of awards. How much he sounded like Bob Dylan was really quite impressive. Especially Boyd Holbrook as Johnny Cash, who played a different version of Cash than Walk the Line with Joaquin Phoenix, but I thought he was awesome in this film and just great and had an awesome presence. But perhaps the best performance of this movie is Monica Barbaro. She is magnificent. Her voice, her singing, her guitar playing, all the way to the emotionality that she brings. And she brings such a punch to this film, a much needed punch at times. And I loved her performance in this flick. I thought she was one of the best. And of course, the production design is amazing as well. I thought it looked great on film, and especially the music scenes was phenomenal to hear and see. Besides those things, I really didn't think this movie was ultimately that great. It didn't tell much about Bob Dylan. I know he was a pretty private person, and the way they portrayed him in this movie is not very likable, and many characters in this film say Bob, you're kind of an asshole. And that's just sort of how he felt. I didn't get to learn a lot about Bob Dylan or dive deep into his character in the end, even though this is supposed to be like a character study. The climax of the film felt very weak and didn't feel like it really built up to anything much in the end. Reveal much to us, which is too bad, because that's what I want a biopic to do, is to show us and tell us about this character and let us live their life a little bit. And I just didn't get that in this film. I don't know if the filmmakers like Bob Dylan, so I don't know if I should be really liking Bob Dylan in this movie, if that makes any sense. So ultimately, I'm gonna go ahead and give A Complete Unknown a B. The next film on my list is Emilia Perez. Some wonderful choreography and dance numbers in this, and the way that the camera moves throughout the action of the musical numbers is great. The performances are spectacular. Very solid performances in this film. Loved this story. I thought it was really interesting and compelling. Redemption arc and a tragedy all kind of rolled into one movie, while also being a musical. I think it's really more of an opera. I mean, it's based on an opera, and you definitely feel that operaticness throughout the entirety of this film. However, and this is a really big, sad however, the music in this movie is not very good. Especially the English spoken or English sung songs in this film are atrocious. But even the ones in Spanish, just, I don't know. It just didn't really work that well. And they sing-song their way through, serious, extreme, crazy moments that are very jarring, and it kind of takes you out of the movie a bit. You're like, whoa, I can't believe we're jumping into a song right now. There are so many better movies out there with way better songs, even songs this year that came out. I wanted to love the music, and I couldn't get into it. This movie definitely feels like if Sicario was a musical, and I couldn't stop thinking about that throughout the entirety of this film. I thought some of the editing was a little bit weak, and it could have been trimmed down, even though it's not too long of a movie, and some musical numbers could have been completely cut, and I think that would have really helped trim down this film. The next film on this list is Nosferatu. Roger Eggers is a great horror filmmaker. I really loved The Lighthouse and especially The Northman. I did enjoy this film. I thought it's a really great gothic romance horror film, and as strange of a mix as that is, it works. There are some gross, disgusting moments in this movie as a horror fan that I thought was awesome. Awesome! And the tone of this movie is so kind of pitch perfect, and sometimes too much pitch perfect, because it's like a one-tone note sort of movie, but that tone is dark, deep, depressing, and just full of despair and dread, and I love the alliteration of the D's. And I think if you enjoy this kind of genre and this kind of gothic film, you're gonna love this movie. And this sort of filmmaking that Roger Eggers brings and writes to this. Performances are great, especially from Lily Rose Depp and Bill Skarsgård as our two leads. They are phenomenal in this flick, but also I just love that like William Dafoe is doing his William Dafoe things in this movie, and the rest of the cast is great. I thought they were really awesome and solid throughout this film. However, this movie does feel a little bit of like, again, a retread of Dracula. Now, I've seen this Dracula story 100 times. I honestly would rather just go and watch Bram Stoker's Dracula, the Francis Ford Coppola film. That's much more of like my kind of vampire and vampire story, especially if we're going to involve like love and romance. This is a little bit more unsettling and not creepier, but just it doesn't seem pretty. It's not trying to be pretty. That's not the point of this movie. It's actually working really hard to be ugly and gross and kind of disgusting. It's definitely not my cuppa, as I like to say. So while I did enjoy this film, this is definitely not my favorite Roger Eggers movie. It is definitely worth the watch, especially if you're a horror fan. So I'm gonna go ahead and give Nosferatu a B+. And the last film on this list for today is ARealPain. Yes, I finally got to check out this Jesse Eisenberg acted, directed, and written film, and along with co-star Kieran McCulkin. They are so good in this movie together, and it just felt like they had such good chemistry, and what Jesse Eisenberg and Kieran McCulkin brought to their characters and brought to the big screen was amazing. It is so well written, very well directed. I love the story of like a road trip movie, especially in Europe, people rediscovering, you know, their roots, in this case, like going back to see their grandma's homeland, and I just love it. This kind of movie is emotional, but it's dark, it's funny, it's depressing, it's interesting, it's wacky at times. It is definitely about these two guys, but it's also about the group and the tour that they're on, and the supporting cast is wonderful as well. This is a really funny film to check out. It's also a really well done movie for its depiction of mental health and people struggling with like depression and, you know, grief and loss and stuff like that. And it's shown so differently through these two characters, and the production and the locations that they go to in Poland is wonderful. They actually got to shoot inside of a real concentration camp for one of the scenes. So this movie just kind of like hits a lot of, you know, my beats and my notes that I love, and I had a fun time watching it. It is definitely worth checking out. I see why it's an awards contender, especially for Kieran McCulkin to win. So I'm gonna go ahead and give ARealPain an A-. If you like this video, click that like button and subscribe to my channel for more content. Also, comment down below, what did you think of these 6 movies? Out of all these movies, which one was your favorite? Come back and check out some other movie reviews, such as Top 10 Most Anticipated Films of 2025 and the Top 10 Movies of 2024. Thanks for watching, everyone. Have a great day, and we'll see you on the next film.